Something ungodly lingers here. She found her way into your mind. Into your dreams, didn't she?
We are talking about the movie HEX, which comes to us from Rubicon Films on the 17th of November. Now this one is based in the English Civil War. Yes, we had one too, kids. And in case you don't know, that was actually between known as the Parliamentarians, which were kind of commonly known as the Roundheads, and the Royalists, which were known as the Cavaliers. And the conflict went on for around 9 years, I believe it was. And the story focuses on an opposing soldier of each side kind of being separated on their own and coming across each other, obviously at odds first of all. However, they soon realise they have to kind of start working together because they are under the impression there is this kind of strange force in this forest which is preventing them from leaving, trying to kind of almost keep them there and trying to kill them. It's showing them kind of strange visions, things like that, strange noises. They believe there is some kind of like witch in the woods, as there is kind of strange symbols all around. Very much your Blair Witch kind of feel here to it, although obviously it's not a found footage film. So these two guys basically have to kind of team up to try and overcome what they perceive as this kind of supernatural threat. Now we've seen this kind of story before. Obviously you've seen things like Enemy Mine, Battlestar Galactica had an episode. There's been a whole bunch of kind of movies. Obviously the famous probably been the World War II one. But obviously here it is in a kind of a low-budget British kind of drama / horror film on the subject. Although I would say this is kind of packaged or it sounds like a horror film, it's really a drama film with a few kind of horror trappings here and there. So let's talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about HEX. So we'll go off with the negatives first of all, because I do want to end with the positives on this movie, because there is a big one. I guess the biggest negative though is the fact when it's all said and done, you could say this movie is essentially 90% two guys wearing kind of period costumes running around in the woods. That is pretty much a movie, if we're completely honest. That is the majority of the running time here. There's very little dialogue in this movie, so you're kind of just watching these two guys, sometimes at odds, sometimes kind of working together, seemingly just kind of running around in the forest, seemingly not doing a whole lot. So there is a legitimate critique there that this film is a little slow and a little dull at times because you don't seem to kind of, doesn't kind of have much going on. And there's not a lot of dialogue in there. There's a lot of kind of shots with these two guys just sitting there silently. It didn't need to happen. I feel it would have benefited from these two guys conversing a little bit because we don't really get to know much in regards to their kind of characters. Now, they never really become chummy like you do see in some of these movies, but I think it would have helped their characters if we they conversed a little bit and they obviously talked a little bit about their kind of like their family or whatever it is basically. I mean, we get a little bit of dialogue at the end of the movie, but to be honest with you, you know very little about these kind of guys. Other critique here, there is really 3 actors in this movie and one of them doesn't appear until towards the end of the movie. So it's really based on these two guys and their kind of relationship. And I've got to be honest with you, I thought one of the actors was quite strong, the other one was not as strong. Let's just put it politely. I don't think there's necessarily bad acting, but not strong acting. And when you only have a very small cast, you kind of notice it. So although I don't think the acting was bad, it was noticeably, just a little bit of a difference between the two of them. And then really, the final thing I'll kind of say in regards to the negativity here is that there are a couple of fight scenes in this movie, and I thought the choreography was quite poor. Now, this is not trying to be a flashy kind of Hollywood action fest. However, I do feel like they're clearly kind of obviously trying to pull their punches and act like they're fighting. And the fight scenes that we do have don't really seem like they're really fighting, more just kind of play acting, which of course they are, but we don't want to kind of know that, if that makes sense. But that's a really minor point of the film, if I'm honest. But what works with this film, there's one huge thing. This film massively sticks to the ending. Such a good ending. Really, really strong ending. And when we kind of obviously ultimately meet our kind of our tertiary character, it really does present you with a very complex kind of like moral dilemma, I guess you want to say, without giving anything away, that I feel is very strong and really kind of makes you think and makes you kind of question things. I thought it's very, very good and is pretty shocking in a lot of ways. I thought the ending was superbly handled, and it almost makes you appreciate the kind of the slow pace of the film that much more, because you kind of, I think the ending is such a good ending. It really does maybe complement the kind of the lack of story before that. Moving on, other than that, 'cause that's definitely the biggest positive for me. But I also kind of like the authenticity of this movie. Obviously, it's trying to be as much as historically correct as possible. But I think they did a good job of really kind of showing you a kind of a 17th century way these guys were dressed and the kind of the set dressing. I mean, we do see you know, some kind of like props and things like that. But I thought they did a very good job of making it look authentic, and obviously the kind of the way these sort of characters are written. Like I said, they're a bit underwritten, but what we do have, I feel, you know, seems to be pretty authentic for the time. It does make me think. I mean, I haven't spoken about roundheads and stuff since I was at school. It's something I'd really kind of forgotten about until I kind of watched this movie. So it was kind of nice to almost get a little bit more of a history lesson on obviously English history, which whilst you're an adult, you kind of have your busy day working life, you kind of forget about. You always hear about the American Civil War, but you kind of forget in England that we had one as well, but obviously it was a long time before that. Anyway, so that was pretty good, and I do think there are some kind of neat effects here. There's kind of one particularly kind of spooky scene involved. I won't spoil it, but it kind of involves when it's kind of night and when they're separated. I thought that was very good, very well done, pretty spooky. But it's not a horror film per se. Like I said, it's a drama with some kind of horror elements. But I do feel it has enough maybe to maybe sate the interest of a horror fan. If you like the movie The Witch, which I guess it's kind of nearest cousin, you know, there's a lot smaller production, obviously, but I feel it has that kind of that rustic kind of like pagan feel to it, which I thought was quite good. And I think the sound effects here are also pretty good. Obviously, it's a very limited budget, so they're not going to have flashy visual effects, but what they make up for is having this kind of eerie atmosphere with these kind of strange kind of noises and stuff like that. So that I all appreciated. Overall, for me, I've got to say the film is a slow-paced film that is definitely not going to be for everyone. There's very little dialogue, really. But the ending makes this film such a kind of like, you know, a lot of films kind of crash and burn on the third act. And although this is late into the third, I thought the ending was so strong here. It really does make me kind of, it made me enjoy the film so much more as a whole. So overall, I'll give this movie a 7 out of 10 because when it's all said and done, although I thought the movie itself had a lot of dull elements, it was such a good ending, it made me enjoy the rest of it. So 7 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.